hip-hop has often been called the great American phenomenon, expressed through the great suppression of black life and just the general experiences of oppressed people. It leaped out as a form of empowerment that quickly grew into this kaleidoscope of experiences that now encompass and influence the whole world, zapping itself into the South African experience, where young youth who mirrored the same experiences basically held on to it. From time immemorial, we have really been critical about what it is we take in to the psychology of our being. South Africans are people who are proud of what they can produce, and quite often than not, it is funny how that pride is juxtaposed in the fact that we still rely on the world to convince us that we are great enough. So this contradiction of loving what we are, but at the very same time waiting for others to tell us when this image of what we're becoming is worthy to truly dominate, is something that characterizes itself in a lot of our commercial art. I'm not going to go into the politics of it, but I just want to use one artist as a pivotal case study for this. Keenan Forbes, famously known as AKA. I'll admit, when I first heard a rapper by the name of AKA, I thought that was one of the corniest rap names I had ever heard in my entire life. How does a rapper AKA himself AKA? But ironically, it's become so poignant because he is, as he intended now, so many things to so many people. He's an all-encompassing image that haunts the South African rap world in the fact that you can't deny his rapping stripes if you really listen closely to the bars, to the detail, to the lyricism. And also, you can't deny the fact that he is by far the most characteristic mascot for South African pop culture appeal. Even more so than Casper Nyovest, who echoes pretty much as a response to AKA, because AKA factors into a very intricate and complex question of South African identity. He's a quote-unquote colored, and in South Africa that means something totally different. It means black in a political context, but it often means anti-black in a cultural context. And AKA is one of those so-called, and I'm going to say so-called a lot here. If you're colored and you're offended, please understand. The context I'm speaking in is the term colored was invented and created as a sociological divide, as a barrier between embracing the massive flow of ethnic influences, which were all really put under this context of oppressed when it comes to the whole project of what South Africa was, which was designed by colonial powers. So if we're really being honest with you, coloreds are blacks and blacks are colored, and the monotony of these terms traps us in very redundant conversations that are more about what we refuse to embrace rather than what we are. So again, AKA is unique in the sense that he embraces his coloredness in the context of blackness, and maybe we have hip-hop to thank for that. Maybe AKA is a great footnote to something that Prophets of the City started by being colored, but doing it in a way where the blackness was self-evident. The reality of what they went through was not separated from the reality of other so-called black people in this country. They represented those who were oppressed. They spoke for them as a voice for them, and they spoke for them in all of the dynamics. They didn't only give us struggle music, they gave us music to rejoice. They gave us a complete window into the human experiences. AKA is really the postmodern rendition of that. He is what I think is an answer to what South Africa has been crying for this whole time. Somebody who can insert themselves into the political dynamic without playing into certain labels of conscious or pop, but just become an artist who is unapologetically listening in to all of the cultural nuances that are happening in their space. Enter Entity, aka is running his stripes. He's part of a group with other rappers who shall not be mentioned right now because, well, this is about AKA. But I find that the story of Entity is an important thrusting board in that it introduces us to the fact that this is somebody who doesn't necessarily come from the lowest rungs of the South African economy. He knows what struggle is. Spent time with his grandmother in Mitchell's Plain, but really his parents worked hard enough for him to know what it was like to have a quote-unquote middle class life in post-apartheid South Africa. So from that early age, he understands how people who experience the struggle, and when I say the struggle, I mean the complete, utter wretchedness of socio-political decomposition. He knows what that is like. He has touched base with it, and yet he still lives very comfortably in the loins of being supported by parents who worked hard enough for him to experience the semblance of what it's like to be a middle-class South African person of color. He then understands the nuances. This is why AKA is one of the fewest MCs who can mention both Mandela and Versace in the same verse. He's one of those people who the worlds of politics aren't prescribed into this place of being proactively speaking against power, but not doing something about how you navigate your own power. He understands that one of the few ways in which South Africans can empower themselves is by understanding how to play this capitalist game. He's a master at that. As somebody who, from his first project, was able to take his sound engineering background and become part of a formidable production team. Shout out to the Ivy League, which defined a lot of the sonic scope of what early 2000 South African hip-hop was becoming. So one thing we have to realize about AKA is that he spent significant time actually molding the sound that we get to appreciate today. He's probably the only person who knows what it's like to be at the boards designing the South African scope and to be on the other side speaking for the narrative that fits into that, which is probably what makes you such an incredible artist. He knows what it's like to think from the point of view of the musician in all of its aspect, from the aspect of the subtleties that determine what kind of sounds speak to which kind of people, to knowing how to take the musical scores, then once you've given to them to the people, echo their chants, echo their slogans, echo their language. I mean, for God's sake, AKA cannot technically speak isiZulu or any of the other South African languages besides English and maybe a little bit of Afrikaans, and yet he probably has some of the most poignant vernacular references ever. Shout out to the Ginsas, because he has always taken pride in stretching himself beyond his own capabilities to speak to the broadest possible South African demographic. He went from 5 Clipper to 25 Stina, and who knows how much he's being paid right now. This is somebody who said, instead of Cristal, I'm gonna talk about JC LaRue. Instead of JC LaRue, I'm gonna actually get my own deal and talk about Cruz. This is somebody who's able to navigate the commercial and cultural scope and really understand what it means to become an agent of the culture industry. AKA is not just a rapper who's being pushed by the waves of trend. He's one of the people who understand where trends come from, the deep down roots of culture. AKA sits down, studies the times, and comes through with something that is indicative of where he is in ways that translate to where the times are. Levels, an album which in AKA's reign of about 2014 to 2017 was able to put itself as part of the key focal point in a discussion that I think we still haven't truly delved deep into. Levels was highly influenced by electro sounds, and yet still was able to kind of attach itself very firmly into that quote-unquote dusty street esque aesthetic of what the townships and South Africa's nightlife represent. AKA, from a sonic point of view, really has been the architect of one of South Africa's sonic scopes. And as a rapper, he's got quotables for days. I'm not just talking about Ranjozi Sim Dope, which speaks to everybody's anthemic desire to overcome the capitalist yoke. Hands in the air if you've been broke. Who hasn't been broke? I see millionaires. That's the end goal. And AKA has been somebody who, through the references, whether he's talking about Bekitele, he chooses to talk about people we know. Whether it's political figures, whether it's soccer icons, whether it's celebrities. He loves embellishing himself in South African pop culture, regurgitates it to us as almost like a systolic tabloid article with a little bit of chic and swag. AKA is unapologetically arrogant because he knows he does what he does pretty well. He's had a consistent streak of giving us hits that speak to the people, and that's why his legacy is solidified in him being a voice that touches the global world in a way that speaks to the authentic experience of South Africans. Whether it's his attention to using slang, whether it's his attention to locating his references in the South African world that will leave an American really keen to understand what he's talking about. I appreciate the fact that AKA is setting a standard, has set the standard for artists who have come after him, who truly listen and understand what the AKA playbook is all about, to present South Africa in ways that show the rest of the world why it is so special to be a South African. In all of our guts, in all of our gore, in all of our blood and gut-wrenching pain and our glory. AKA is somebody who's able to navigate through that because he's had both the glory and the guts. He's been at the face of a lot of we'll say unpleasing tabloid articles. He is not in any stretch of the imagination somebody who is concerned with presenting themselves as a morally upright figure. This is a dude who's openly showed us his dark side. Many question, how dark is it? Did he push her off the cliff? That doesn't really matter. What matters to me is the fact that even if he did, even if he didn't, he's a man who's never denied the fact that his humanity is complex, and what you can appreciate and love about him is the fact that he cares for his art, he cares what he puts in to his music, and he cares what he gives his fans. I'm not in any way trying to create some kind of moral acceptance of people's wrongdoing. I'm saying that anything that we can prove is that AKA has always given us heart, spirit, and attention to detail in ways that speak for us, that speak through us, and that act as a mouthpiece to what we are experiencing. His collaborations with artists such as Anati and Costa Teach show that he chooses to work with people who are on the same mission, to be unapologetically South African, and use that to become the filtering aspect for the world to embrace and accept. So why hasn't he reached the world? In the bigger and grander scale that maybe a Nasty C could. I think the easy gains of sounding American are that you can have your billboard on a Times Square today, but tomorrow you drown in the endless loop of America's pop culture. AKA has done something which is, I think, questionably more impressive. He has been able to stretch and expand the network of what a South African artist is able to do, firstly in his own continent, working with artists like Burna Boy, working with artists who across the scope of Africa's dynamic are doing the same thing, of taking what the continent has to offer and giving it to the global world in the context that speaks authentically. From Touch My Blood, Bova Mania, and every other project that he has given us, AKA consistently echoes this authenticity an authenticity that says to us, if we can take aspects of our history and our current reality and our pop culture and our being and our constant production of self in this country and understand their selling points and understand the qualities that make South Africa a country that is potentially endearing and attractive on a capitalist level to the rest of the world, we can understand what makes a Maxhosa by Latu. We can understand what made a Ricky Rick. We can understand what these features that keep echoing into the global imagination about the South African aesthetic and voice are about. And I think ultimately, if we are to look at the Super Mega's legacy in a nutshell, he helped not only design the sound that was taken forward, which later was done as a rendition of Skanda, which later became all these other different things that South African hip-hop could be, but he's also an artist who stood steadfast in the name of hip-hop, speaking for rap, always giving us the bars when it's necessary, but always reminding us that he not only lives in the cypher when he wants to, but he's chosen to be that soundtrack to people's lives, to people's aspirations for luxury, to this very interesting contradiction that the African finds themselves in trying to find power in the context of something which is still very much defined by a Western gaze. AKA, I salute you for being one of the GOATs of South Africa's hip-hop culture. And I say GOAT because originality. He came from a place where the Jay-Z influences that we heard in Alter Ego and the Kanye Westisms through his characteristic and brash appeal were able to slowly become something authentically him. You can hear AKA's nasal draw through the auto-tune. You can hear him slurring the lyrics as if he was drunk on something when he's swagging in those songs. You can hear his particular unique South African accent. You can hear his approach and delicacy to making sure he says those vernac words just right. You can hear his witty punchlines and the way he's able to structure all of this in a way that's undeniably fashionable. Mass appeal. Can we doubt the fact that nobody who claims to be plugged into South African pop culture and just general African hip-hop culture could say they don't know who AKA is? Emotional range. Has this not been a rapper who's able to make wedding songs and able to make songs that are intricately drawn into his country and giving us anthems at the very same time? Has he not been able to, in the middle of a song, say, Madiba's in the grave, the ANC Youth League is tarnishing the country's name? This is a rapper who's able to give us politically succinct lines in the context of a club banger. If that is an emotional range, I don't know what you expect. Technicality, again, hasn't he able to rap and give us rap that is both smooth and cohesive and very just fucking addictive to listen to? If you don't believe me, just play The World Is Yours and the rest is history. Is this not somebody who's stretching from 2014 to 2022, we can say has remained in the general conversation and in the scope of South African hip-hop success? How many years is that? 2014 to 2022.
Why don't you start by 2010? Because Alter Ego was 2010.
2010?
Yeah.
God damn it. AKA,
yeah.
How many years is that?
That's 12 years.
That's 12 fucking years of consistency.
Yes, consistent.
That's 12 years.
Yeah.
There's very few artists who've done that, especially in hip-hop.
Yeah.
So I will really say, who is better than AKA when it comes to those qualities? I mean, we've had a lot of GOATs here. We've done Proverb, we've done Jits,
And Pro Kid.
we've done Pro Kid,
We've done Doomy or
we've done
Stogie.
Doom. I want to say, as VJ, I want to go out there and say it, that if AKA died today, people would be able to accept the fact that he has, through his catalog, through his impact, done more than Pro. We love Pro because he spoke for Eloish and he was a true MC who was able to transcend and do the commercial appeal. But I'm here to declare that in terms of impact, cultural impact, in terms of hit making, in terms of attention to artistic detail, which rapper has done more than Kenan Forbes? I don't think there is anybody who can say that in the span of 20 years of South African art, in the context of rap, has helped push this country's name further in more impressive ways than AKA. So I'm saying it. For me, I feel like AKA is the greatest rapper we've ever had so far. And I want to say thank you to Forbes for constantly showing us that above and beyond pop culture and all the decisions about who you date and how that plays into your name and the things that you do in your personal whatever, man, the music has always been proper. And if we're talking about the music, AKA gotta be the GOAT. Probably the GOAT. My name is VJ. Many are probably gonna get at my neck right now, but yeah, I said it. AKA is greater than Pro. AKA is greater than Chopper. AKA is greater than Verb. AKA is greater than Doomy. Ask Doomy, he probably knows this.
Yeah.
He's greater than Nasty C. AKA stands at the pinnacle of the mountaintop for any rapper who wants to understand how to become great in South Africa. There's a lot we can learn from him because he's still alive. And I'm doing this video mainly because one day he won't, and maybe that's the day where you'll acknowledge it. But perhaps through interesting discussions and video essays like this, we can start to acknowledge and embrace the fact that, like him or not on a personal level, he might be an asshole on Twitter, but the culture, the music, and the expression has always come from a place of empowering not only himself, but this whole country. He's flown the South African flag high as a rapper and as a pop star. So what the fuck do you